Now that we're out of the box, let's go ahead and take a look at this stick. I mean, it's got a nice view it looks layout. The case, I believe, is wood. It's painted with this brilliant pearlescent red, and it looks great. The trim on it is just really nice. I'll show you the size in a minute, but I mean, there's, I don't know if this is carved or what, but it's just really nice. You've got a Samuel joystick and nice gold ball top matched with the buttons. I'm not sure what this button does yet. I'm sure I'll figure it out here in a minute. Again, this is just out of the box impressions. And gold screws there. Nothing up front. I was hoping we get a nice Psycho Crusher there. That'd be cool. Nothing on the joystick side. We do have some. Let's get that even. Start, select, home, I imagine, on that side. And then on the back, we have an A port, which is unusual. It came with an A to A connector. Usually these use B or printer type ports. And then on the back, I think this is the best art by far. It's just, if you're a Shadowloo fan, there you are. It doesn't get better than that. I'm hearing a little rattling on the inside, so maybe something came loose during shipping. I'll check that out here. But otherwise, if you're an M. Bison fan, this looks great right out of the box. We're going to go ahead and take a look inside this stick, because why wouldn't we look at the internals? These are held together with 4 Phillips number 2 screws, also in gold just like the front. So I pre-loosened some of them just to make the video a little nicer to watch. Now, of course, normally when you're working on this, if you're doing it upside down and you don't have a removable joystick shaft, you can, let this off the end of a table or rest it on a stack of pillows, something like that. You definitely, especially with something like this, you want to do protect it, of course. Should be loose enough. One more. There we go. That's fine. We have 6 more screws per second. Watch this. Got the screws out, so let's go ahead and remove this panel. And right away on the paneling, I'm noticing it's a particle board, and they could have left these edges just straight, flat, but look at that, it's nice and rounded, so that's a nice touch. And there's countersunk screw holes, and there's 4 points here for the artwork panel to attach, which are drilled in, so that's good. I did hear something rattling around, and yep, there it is. We'll talk about this little guy in a minute, but I want to talk about what I'm seeing right off the bat, and it's these nice black support rails. They're carbon fiber treated. Well, it's a finish. I'm a sucker for black and red, so this is really nice. Even if, again, it's not something you're going to see 99.99% of the time. That's really nice. And another thing I'm noticing is, just like we had that nice rounded edges, and it looks like these were milled probably CNC with the buttons and around the joystick, so that's really cool. Now, at this price point, you have sticks like the Victrix, which have the push button and it'll pop open. But with that, you don't get that really cool Shadowloo artwork logo. So you got to really decide: is it you want to be able to pop open your joystick really quickly, or do you really want the cool art? It's going to be a decision you have to make. Anyhow, let's go over some of the parts in here, just some impressions, etc. We've already talked about the milling around here. We've got a Samuel JLF joystick. And I'm noticing that usually, there's 4 points of where the screws will be locked down. We've got 6, so this guy definitely not going anywhere. Another thing I'm noticing is we've got an octagonal gate, so I don't know if they knew I was in the Octo Cult, may the blessings of the Eightfold Path be upon you, or that's just the stock configuration. Now this is a JLF, so you can definitely get a square gate if you're that square gate purist, or circle gate, or whatever floats your boat. Now just filling it out, it's standard clickiness. I don't think the spring has been changed, and it looks like the receivers or the actuator is the same. So other than the Octogate, that doesn't seem to be too modified on the internals front. Anyhow, let's move on to our buttons. I'm going to skip this little guy here. Now, we have to bring up this little guy, which was rattling around. Unfortunately, this is a button tab, and I don't know what it is with metallic buttons, snap-ins. They just want to lose their tabs as quickly and as expediently as possible. It's a real pain installing them, taking them out, transporting them. I think this just came off in shipping, and it is what it is. Otherwise, let's give those a wiggle test. I don't think it's that big of a deal, because just as a control, this is one that's working. Here's the guy that's not. There's really not, like, if I do this, it doesn't feel any different in this case. So it's kind of like, what's the opposite of chef's kiss, right? It's not going to break this. It's just kind of a little bit of a, So there you go. I am noticing that the terminals here are bent to kind of accommodate the the height of the case here. That's all. It's not going to damage or change the way it plays. We'd be just fine. The wiring here is zip tied, and I know other sticks have braided cables, etc. And a lot of makers like to braid their cables. In a case where you can never see, for obvious reasons, the cables, I don't mind the wires just being zip tied, and the nice thing is they're pretty secure. They're not going anywhere. I mean, this is a little loose, but I don't think that's going to do anything, so we're fine there. Otherwise, there's your buttons, side buttons, all good. Powering this is a Brook UFB. It's a good choice for multi-system compatibility and speed. I don't think you could fit even an Optimus stack might be a really tight deal, and you'd have to use the screw terminals. But you could probably definitely easily fit an Up 5 into here if you wanted to add PlayStation 5 compatibility, and I'm sure that if you want to pre-order it with that, it can be accommodated. Now, I am noticing, and talked about this a little bit before, you've got this guy here. Converter from the B-type USB that the UFB uses to an A-type that goes out to your front port. And I gotta say, as a computer guy, that kind of... I just wish this became either USB-C or it went to USB-B. Because if, let's say, you are brave enough to take this guy out to your locals or to a tournament, and you realize you forgot that A to A cable. It is near impossible to find a cable like that, at a store or wherever. Whereas a B to A cable, or even C to A, or just C to C cables, are way more commonplace. You might be able to just bum one from someone at the tournament for the time being, just to play your matches. If they have similar removable setups, but with an A to A, it's good luck. Only I think specialized computer stores would have them, and Fry's ain't around anymore. So that's just a potential gotcha. I mean, otherwise it's going to play fine. There's nothing electrically wrong. It's not going to cause lag. It's not, break anything. It's not going shouldn't cause you to, the joystick not be seen. It's a convenience thing. So you have to mind where you put that A to A cable. Otherwise, this is looking really good. Again, wiring is tight and bundled. I know other sticks braided, but again, you're not looking inside, so it's fine. Buttons are plenty solid, joystick plenty solid. And you've got this guy, which is going to do, I think, a touchpad button. It's not something I saw when I was doing some pre-research for this. So we'll test that out in the lab, just see if it works, etc. But otherwise, pretty standard insides. And of course, if you want to modify the JLF, hey, it's a JLF, modify it. Put that auto kit on, put on different spring, put on a different gate, whatever you want to do. Otherwise, we're set to go. We're going to take this down to the lab and give it a little play testing. All right, we are in the lab. We've got ourselves plugged in, ready to rock. So let's just give our quick test with joy.cpl. You can use this with any controller that you plug into your PC. So we'll call that up. It's going to obscure some of this beautiful art, but I'm sorry, it has to be done. All right, let's go and select that. And yep, joystick is mapped to the directional pad as expected. So you can see that point of view light up just fine. And first three buttons work fine. 1, 2, and then yeah, we'll see the Z-axis move. That's fine. That's expected. 8, 5, 6 here. Okay, so all of our buttons are just fine. Totally expected. Start select working just fine. And this guide button at the top is calling up the Xbox game bar. Can't see it obviously in Joy CPL, but it's doing the overlay on my screen. Okay. And here's the mystery button. So it's triggering on the same one that our middle button on the side is doing, but I believe that's going to be a touchpad button for you PS4 users. Not to worry, it's just going to show us this. That's how the book maps it on the Universal Fighting Board. I always want to call it the Ultimate. All right, so that feels pretty good. Now on my desk here, I've got a foam pad for usual keyboard use. So the rubber big feet do slide a little bit, but that's my fault. On my wooden coffee table, it doesn't slide at all. It's just fine. So there's not a concern there. That button that was loose, no problem there. We're good. So really solid build. And let's get into some gameplay. Let's check out how big this guy is. So cross, you're looking at about 15.5 or thereabouts. And then this way we're looking at about 11 inches. Up top, with the ball included, you're talking about 5 inches or so. And just for the case, it's a little above 3, maybe 3 1/4 tops. So not the biggest stick, but not the smallest one either.
Taste the never-ending nightmare.
I'm just gonna put in a quick button check of sorts. So 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go and throw them in. There we go. And cycle pressure action, sure. Okay. So everything feels pretty good. There's the start button, select's not going to do anything, the guide's not going to do anything. This does not do anything on PC, and please don't laugh at my rank. I don't play Street Fighter 5 online. It's pretty standard Sanwa and Vuelix layout combination. So most joysticks do use Vuelix. Coming from Noir or some other layout, then it might take a little bit of adjustment time, but most folks should feel pretty at home. The Octogate feels pretty good with a charge character. I mean, I'm a little biased, obviously, but again, if you want that square gate, of course, I'm sure you can get it. And bop, bop, okay. I am noticing that this bottom edge is, you can feel it. It's not It's not going to hurt, I don't think, but it is noticeable. That said, if you find the joystick tension is too low, it's pretty easy to add a spring. The JLF is so modifiable, you can do whatever you want to just about. Alright, so, yeah. All set, yep, feels pretty good. Even the button with the missing tab, it's not going anywhere. Mash it pretty well, and nothing's gonna happen. That said, feels good. Overall, pretty solid. Just would note the bottom kind of rail here is going to be on your wrist unless you kind of play like this, and I don't know anybody that does that. I'm playing standing up, and I assume sitting down is going to do the same thing. Alright, let's go back up for some final thoughts. Time for final thoughts, conclusions, summaries, pros, cons, suggestions, all that jazz. Now, when I first saw this stick, both online and when I pulled it out of the box and all of its wrapping, I think what struck me first was the beautiful, sparkly red paint. I mean, on this case, it just looks awesome, and it complements the theme so well. Not too dark, not too light, it just looks wonderful. And I'm a sucker for pearlescent, sparkly, iridescent finishes, so that might just be me. That said, the case is pretty solid. It's not an all-steel construction like AFS, but, then again, it doesn't have the all-steel weight and carrying problems that an AFS might have. So, that said, this can be pretty portable. If you did want to take it out to your locals or other tournaments or other events, it's not impossible to pack. I would personally upgrade it with a link, like I've mentioned. There you go. It's a good size. It's not huge, but it's not small either. I think it's a little bit bigger than maybe an Obsidian or something, or a TE or something like that. Anyhow, let's go over some of the artistic choices and things I'd like to suggest there. Now, first, I'd like to go over the gold here, because that's the second thing that always pops out to me. The M. Bison artwork underneath, we'll get to it, trust me, but just the highlights of the gold buttons and the joystick topper and even the screws are what catches my eye second. And it's hard not to with how shiny it is. Now, there's a thing with the screws here which I think is impressive in that they kind of match the screw gold to the joystick gold and the buttons gold. Might be a shade or two off, but having to match those two, I think, is actually pretty impressive. Now, that said, this is a $400 stick, with shipping, around that price point. So, I feel like there's two improvements we can make here, and that is, first, I'd like to see countersunk washers, because I just feel like those add just a little bit of panache, let's say. And then, for the screws themselves, I'd like to see hex head screws used, because I think those just add a little bit of good taste. A Phillips screw, it's okay, but when we're at this price point and we are an art piece first and foremost, I feel I just want that extra kind of decor, right? So yeah, it's small, it's nitpicky, but again, it's $400 for a fight stick, so it's something to consider. The other thing is, when I think of M. Bison, I don't necessarily think of gold. I actually think more of those giant shoulder pads and those giant shin guards, like my man's out to play some serious soccer, generally with your head. And as in maybe an alternative version, I'd like to see silver or maybe gunmetal all to replace the gold trim here. And on that note, the lightning bolts look great, and he's got on his belt buckle, that's awesome. But I think the Shadaloo logo, the skull with the wings, is more fitting for the button inserts. I just think that looks cooler, and I understand that that's a wide boy, and trying to fit that inside those little tiny buttons might be a challenge. One thing I did pick up on was these button inlays are really firmly set. So I've done my own cut them out, print on transparency, and gotten fit on some other buttons I have. And they do have a tendency, no matter how well you exacto them, to not fit terribly well. And these are just very well fitted. It's a minor detail, but again, $400, you want to have these minor details, and that looks great. So having the gunmetal option, I think, is one thing. Having the option for Shadowloo logo, the skull with the wings, or just the cracked skull in a certain way, I think would be a great inset. Let's talk about some of the other art pieces here. Suggestions I have. I really love the back panel. I don't want to turn this around right now, so you're getting the overlay. That Shadowloo logo looks beautiful. It's too bad it's not going to be seen half the time when you're going around with this stick, but hey, that's life. But for a $400 stick, we'd expect art on the back panel, and it looks great there. This front panel art, it's going to be, I think it might be a little bit divisive. I love these poses. They look great. And it's just hard to accommodate art around the buttons, around the joystick that goes and flows well. I think this does a pretty good job. There's this kind of a screw in the center one's head, but otherwise, these are some really great poses. I love the one on the left. You've got that Alpha 2. I'm just backing up so I can charge up something. Don't you worry. And then my man is really feeling himself in the lower right corner. So that's great. One opportunity I think we missed, though, was that bottom panel. Or, the side that faces you when you've got this laying flat. Just having a Psycho Crusher there. Oh, I think that would just be so good. And I know it could be lit up a little bit. Purple lights look sweet. And just because I've seen the Fist of the North Star stick, at least on the website, I think that would be really baller to have that there. And again, at this price point, $400, you might be looking at a Victrix, and they had their M. Bison stick that just had kind of the Street Fighter II era artwork from there etched on. And there was the Mad Catz Shadowloo stick that just had the logo. So it's really personal choice what artwork you like. I love the poses here. If it were my stick, personally, I might put the bottom right one, kind of a profile, just really large, up around here. And then maybe some other textures on the sides here, something like that. But still, if you're a fan of M. Bison, you'll like this, I think. Okay, so that's the artwork, my opinions on it, some suggestions and options, and I'm positive that you can absolutely get your own custom artwork done. So if you've got an M. Bison pose in mind, or you can absolutely work with Fightstick Guy to make that happen. So then let's talk about some other things. So just to review a couple of the nitpicks I have about this stick. Number one is that top slot USB. Now, I do really like how these are milled out. It's smooth, it's inset. You're not likely to, accidentally, if we had buttons up here, it'd be a little bit less likely that you just hit them with them being inset. And, it applies to the buttons on that side. So that is very nice. I like that. That's not something I can get with an AFS, for example. But as I went on an extended rant about, if you lose this cable and you don't have an A to A cable and you take this to a local or even at home, you're gonna have to wait a couple days maybe to get one ordered. And that can, especially if you took this to a major tournament, you really wanted to show it off, but then I have no cable to play it with, and you can't borrow anybody's because it doesn't use it. At this price point, I think we should expect a USB-C connection. It just should be the standard nowadays. And yes, it's still not as ubiquitous as an A to B cable, which a lot of the Nutrix-based sticks use. They're more common. So USB-C, I think we should see that at this price point. And it's not super hard. There are kits now to do USB-C to USB-B. I don't know. I can't speak for how well they work, but there are ways to convert it. That said, I'd also like to see L3 and R3 buttons to make this a little bit more practical, especially when you're going into training mode. You want to set that record, you want to set that playback. Those buttons are what typically do it. And without that option, if you're playing on PC, then maybe you can set a keyboard button to do it. With some setup, I don't know, but not having it on the stick is a little bit of an inconvenience. That's all. And finally, and I mentioned it in the lab section, playing sitting down or standing up doesn't seem to matter. If you're used to having a flat stick, around here, then the first time you play this, you're definitely going to notice this kind of touching your wrist. It's not going to, do welts. It's not going to, do damage, but it is noticeable. Another thing is this paint is lovely, like I mentioned. I love it to death. It doesn't pick up smears. You've got acrylic here. If you have very oily hands, right now mine are pretty dry. That's obviously going to pick up stuff. Maybe not as bad as some of the metallic panels that are out there. But that can be cleaned fairly easily with some microfiber towels and maybe a little lens cleaner or lens cleaner wipe. So that's not a huge strike against it. That's just the nature of acrylic. It will pick up oils and fingerprints and stuff a little bit. I didn't notice it too much, so it wasn't bad, but it might just need a clean after you do some extensive use. Let's start wrapping things up by talking about who would really appreciate this stick versus, who this stick wouldn't really be meant for, and some other concluding thoughts. So first of all, I have already mentioned this, but this is primarily an art piece and a fight stick second, which is not to take away from its fight stick ability. It's just fine there. You've already seen the lab. It's totally functional. But think of it this way. If you have a $200, $250 stick, Convo Obsidian, Pearl, or Mad Cats, or whatever, and you go to locals, you go to tournaments, or just play at home, and it starts getting dings, scuffs, whatever. Maybe you just get a little bit salty, more than you'd care to admit, and a little bit of pounding ensues. Those sticks, you beat them up a little bit, okay. It's not great that they have scuffs or scrapes, but they'll live. They're workhorses. They'll be fine. Whereas if you got this scuffed, scraped, dinged, banged up, damaged, you just feel super bad about spoiling this lovely case and this lovely red paint, and I can't stop gushing over it because it's just so nice. And that's kind of what I really want to emphasize with it being an art piece first. It's something that is going to draw attention. It's definitely looks great, and so on. It's definitely for the M. Bison hardcore collector that just wants something that's rare and really good looking in their collection. Maybe they already have the Mad Cat Shadaloo. Maybe they already have the Victrix M. Bison. This is the next thing to add, guys. That's what you want in there if you've already got those, or you're looking to start your M. Bison collection. Who is this fight stick not meant for? Well, if you're not a hardcore M. Bison collector type, obviously probably not for you. If you are looking to start, getting into that, and maybe you've been playing pad or keyboard or what have you, and this is your first fight stick, well, maybe this is a good choice. But if you're looking for something with more bells and whistles, like a lockout switch, a stick select switch, a turbo button, things like that, then this probably isn't for you. If you're looking for a workhorse kind of stick that you can throw in a bag, not worry about too much, I really wouldn't recommend this either. It's just too precious. It's just too precious. But if you are, again, that hardcore, really loves Dictator, wants to show it off to everybody, then this is the stick for you. Now, maybe you saw this and thought, you know, M. Bison, cool dude, winning smile, but not the character for me. Well, check out FightstickGuide.com where you'll find assortment of other fight sticks, different characters, different themes, and different layouts, and all sorts of other stuff. And if none of those work for you, you can always commission your own custom build, so you can have the fight stick you've always wanted. With that said, I'm Zevros, and this has been the Arcade Stick.
The arcade stick.